All right, so now that I've been in the LBJ Library, I'm going to go through a couple of the highlights. LBJ was born in 1908, died in 1973 of a heart attack. He was married in 1934, and he came from very humble backgrounds, but as several people mentioned in the library, he was incredibly intelligent and also a really hard worker. So with a combination of those two, he was able to rise through the ranks. He was a congressman from West Texas. Then he became a senator, where he became the leader of the Democratic Party in the Senate as the minority leader. And that led to his role as vice president under President Kennedy. When Kennedy was shot in 1963 in Dallas, he immediately became the president, and his presidency actually probably, when you look at the legislation, was probably significantly better than President Kennedy's in terms of what he was able to accomplish. He was elected president again in 1964. He defeated Barry Goldwater, and something interesting about that election is that before this, Democrats in the South typically helped elect the presidents. In other words, the South was consistently Democratic. But because of some of the legislation that was passed under Johnson, including the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, that has kind of switched, and it stayed that way, where in most states in the South, they vote Republican up to this day. And it kind of stems back to Johnson's presidency. Those were part of his Great Society, which included things like the War on Poverty, Job Corps, and other things like that to try to help improve working class poor people in the United States, especially in the cities. Although that wasn't, it didn't work out as well in some areas as expected. We had like the Watts riots and things like that happened during the long, hot summer, as it was called. So Johnson was known for his Johnson treatment, which is where he'd get in your face. He was known to work all hours of the day. It would have been really hard to work for President Johnson because he was so smart, such a hard worker, and loved to work all the time. He probably has the ugliest Oval Office that I've ever seen, and I've seen 6 of them so far. And for the first time, I've seen Lady Bird Johnson's office. She, typically the president's spouse, takes on programs of their own, and it was kind of cool to see for the first time an office of the president's spouse. The end of his term, why didn't he run in 1968? He could have. He decided that he would neither seek nor accept the nomination of the Democratic Party for the nomination in 1968. And most of that had dealt with one of the aspects of the Cold War, which was the Vietnam War. Real quickly, the Cold War was a drawn out from 1945 until roughly 1991, a war between the U.S. and the USSR, where they didn't actually fight each other, but they were combating each other in different areas of the world to try to gain influence, power over the other. There were 2 superpowers in the world, the U.S. and the USSR, and they were fighting around the world in different ways. So the Vietnam War was part of that, and it just didn't go well for Johnson. The number of troops, the number of U.S. citizens fighting in Vietnam increased dramatically during his presidency. Unbeknownst to the U.S., the communist Vietnamese launched the Tet Offensive on their new year, where they were able to attack the U.S. Embassy in Saigon, which is now called Ho Chi Minh City. Ho Chi Minh was the leader of the communists in the war. And so he didn't run for president, and he ended up dying at his LBJ ranch outside of Johnson City in 1973. So that's a little background on President Johnson. I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you in the classroom soon. Take care.